Rich customer called black cashier, too slow. Then her response made the whole store clap. What if a single moment of courage could change everything for a woman fighting to keep her family afloat? Jada Johnson was no stranger to long shifts. At 24, she'd been working at Greenleaf Market, an upscale grocery store in the heart of Willow Heights, for nearly 2 years. The neighborhood was a sea of manicured lawns, luxury cars, and people who wore their wealth like a second skin. Jada, with her neatly braided hair and warm brown eyes, didn't belong to their world, but she navigated it with quiet resilience. Every day, she clocked in at 7 a.m., her navy blue apron pressed and her smile ready, even when her feet ached and her heart felt heavy. She was the sole breadwinner for her family, her mother, who battled chronic illness, and her younger brother, Malik, a high school junior with dreams of college. Jada's paycheck kept the lights on, the fridge stocked, and Malik's hopes alive. Greenleaf wasn't just any grocery store. It was the kind of place where organic avocados cost more than a fast food meal and the clientele expected service with a side of deference. Jada was good at her job, fast, accurate, and polite, but she'd learned early on that some customers saw her as invisible, or worse, as less than. Her dark skin and modest upbringing made her a target for their subtle, and not so subtle, disdain. She'd heard it all, the sighs when she took a second too long to scan an item, the muttered comments about these people, the way some customers avoided her lane altogether. But Jada had a mantra she repeated in her head: keep going. Keep shining. It was her shield against the world's sharp edges. Today, though, felt different. The morning had started with a call from her mother's doctor about a new treatment they couldn't afford. Malik had been quieter than usual at breakfast, his eyes glued to his phone, avoiding her questions about his college applications. Jada's hands trembled slightly as she scanned items, her mind split between the register and the weight of her responsibilities. She was tired, not just physically, but deep in her bones, where hope sometimes struggled to take root. Jada wasn't just a cashier, she was a dreamer. In her rare moments of quiet, she'd sketch designs for dresses in a worn notebook, imagining a future where she could start her own fashion line. She'd always loved creating, sewing patches onto Malik's jeans, turning thrift store finds into runway-worthy outfits. Her mother used to say Jada had magic in her hands, and those words kept her going. But dreams were hard to hold onto when you were working 50-hour weeks and dodging the microaggressions of entitled customers. Enter Richard Montgomery, a regular at Greenleaf whose reputation preceded him. At 52, Richard was the kind of man who measured his worth by his bank account and expected everyone else to do the same. He drove a sleek black Mercedes, wore tailored suits even on casual errands, and carried an air of superiority that made the air around him feel colder. To Richard, service workers like Jada were cogs in a machine, replaceable, forgettable. He'd been coming to Greenleaf for years, always with a cart full of imported cheeses, organic wines, and exotic fruits, and he never left without making someone feel small. The staff had a nickname for him, the King, though there was nothing regal about his behavior. The other customers in line that day were a mix of the usual Willow Heights crowd, a harried soccer mom scrolling through her phone, an elderly man clutching a single bag of kale, a young couple whispering to each other about their weekend plans. They were witnesses to the unfolding drama, their reactions a barometer of the moment. Some would side with Richard, impatient for their own convenience. Others would see Jada, really see her, for the first time. It was just past noon when Richard rolled his cart into Jada's lane. His cart was a monument to excess: truffle oil, artisanal bread, a bottle of champagne that cost more than Jada's weekly grocery budget. She greeted him with her standard, "Good afternoon, sir. Did you find everything okay?" But Richard barely acknowledged her, his eyes fixed on his phone as he barked into it about a delayed business deal. Jada scanned his items with her usual efficiency, her hands moving in a rhythm she'd perfected over months. But her nerves were frayed, and when the scanner beeped twice on a jar of imported olives, she had to void the duplicate. It took all of 5 seconds, but to Richard, it was an eternity. "Are you always this slow?" he snapped, his voice loud enough to draw eyes from the neighboring lanes. "You people really need to pick up the pace." The words hit Jada like a slap. You people. She'd heard it before, too many times, but today, it felt like a blade slicing through her armor. Her hands froze on the scanner, her heart pounding in her chest. The line behind Richard grew restless, the soccer mom letting out an audible sigh, the elderly man shifting uncomfortably. The air in the store thickened, charged with the tension of unspoken truths. Jada's first instinct was to shrink, to apologize, to make herself small. That's what she'd done before, swallowed the hurt, kept her head down, and moved on. But something in her snapped today. Maybe it was the call from the doctor, or Malik's silence, or the weight of carrying her family's dreams on her shoulders. Whatever it was, Jada wasn't going to let this moment pass. She took a deep breath, steadying her trembling hands, and looked Richard in the eye. Her voice was calm but firm, carrying a quiet power that silenced the murmurs around her. "You know, sir, I may be slow, but I take pride in making sure I do my job right. It's not about speed, it's about respect and quality." Richard blinked, caught off guard. He opened his mouth to respond, but Jada wasn't finished. She straightened her spine, her voice growing stronger with every word. "And just for the record, you don't get to belittle me because of the color of my skin or the pace at which I work. I'm doing the best I can. But you, sir, could probably use a little bit of humility and grace. Might make your day, and your life, go a lot smoother." The store fell silent. The hum of the scanners, the rustle of bags, the chatter of customers, all of it stopped. Richard stood frozen, his face a mix of shock and indignation, his mouth slightly agape. For a moment, it seemed like he might lash out, but something in Jada's unwavering gaze held him back. Then, from the back of the line, a single pair of hands began to clap. It was the elderly man with the kale, his weathered hands moving slowly but deliberately. The young couple joined in, then the soccer mom, her phone forgotten in her hand. The applause spread like wildfire, growing louder, filling the store with a sound that was both celebration and reckoning. Richard's face turned crimson, his jaw tight with embarrassment. He grabbed his cart, his movements jerky, and muttered something under his breath. Jada didn't flinch. She finished ringing up his items, her hands steady now, and slid the receipt across the counter. "Have a good day, sir," she said, her voice clear and unshaken. Richard didn't respond. He snatched his bags and stormed out, the glass doors sliding shut behind him with a soft whoosh. The applause faded, but the energy in the store lingered, electric and alive. The rest of Jada's shift passed in a blur. Customers who had witnessed the exchange approached her with words of support. The young couple thanked her for standing up, saying they'd never seen anything like it. The soccer mom, now sheepish, apologized for her impatience. Even the elderly man, who rarely spoke, gave her a nod and said, "You did good, kid." Jada smiled and nodded, but inside, she was reeling. Had she gone too far? Would she lose her job? The fear crept in, gnawing at the edges of her pride. She needed this job, her family needed it. What if Richard complained to corporate? What if the store saw her as a liability? As her shift ended, the store manager, Ms. Linda Carter, called Jada into her office. Linda was a no-nonsense woman in her late 40s, with a reputation for fairness but a tendency to avoid confrontation with high-spending customers like Richard. Jada braced herself, her stomach twisting as she sat across from Linda's cluttered desk. "Jada," Linda began, her tone unreadable. "I heard what happened today." Jada's heart sank. "I'm sorry if I caused a scene, Ms. Carter. I just—" Linda held up a hand, cutting her off. "Don't apologize. You were absolutely right. Richard Montgomery is one of our most regular and most demanding customers. We've all tiptoed around him for years, afraid to lose his business. But today, you showed us what real customer service looks like. Not just in speed, but in standing up for yourself and others." Jada blinked, stunned. "You're not mad." Linda smiled, a rare softness in her eyes. "Mad? No. I'm proud. You handled that with more grace and courage than I've seen in a long time. And I'm not the only one who thinks so." The next morning, Jada arrived at work to find an email from Greenleaf's corporate office waiting in her inbox. It was addressed to the entire staff, with her name in bold at the top. The email praised her professionalism, her composure, and her ability to handle a difficult situation with dignity. It ended with an announcement. Jada was being promoted to head cashier, effective immediately, with a pay raise and additional responsibilities overseeing the front-end team. Jada stared at the screen, her eyes welling up. A promotion. A raise. It wasn't just about the money, though that would help with her mother's treatments and Malik's college fund. It was about recognition. For the first time, Jada felt seen, not as a cog in the machine, but as a person with value, with strength. Word of the incident spread beyond the store. Customers who had been in line that day shared the story on social media, praising the young cashier who'd stood up to the king. A local news outlet picked it up, running a feature titled, "Cashier's Courage Sparks Change at Greenleaf Market." Jada's phone buzzed with messages from strangers, thanking her for her bravery, for showing that respect wasn't a privilege reserved for the wealthy. Richard Montgomery, meanwhile, didn't return to Greenleaf for weeks. When he finally did, he avoided Jada's lane, his usual swagger replaced by a quiet unease. The store staff noticed, exchanging knowing glances. The king had been dethroned, not by force, but by the power of one woman's voice. Jada's story wasn't just about one moment in a grocery store. It was about the quiet battles fought every day by people like her. People who work tirelessly, who carry the weight of their families, who face prejudice with a smile because they have no other choice. Her words to Richard weren't just a rebuke, they were a declaration of her worth, a refusal to be diminished. For Jada, the promotion was more than a job title. It was a step toward her dreams, a reminder that standing up for herself didn't just change her, it changed the people around her. Malik, inspired by his sister's courage, started working harder on his college applications, determined to make her proud. Her mother, hearing the story from Malik, called Jada that night, her voice thick with tears. "You've got magic in more than your hands, baby," she said. "You've got it in your heart." Months later, Jada stood at the front of Greenleaf Market, her new head cashier badge pinned to her apron. The store was bustling, but she moved with a quiet confidence, her smile brighter than ever. She still sketched designs in her notebook during breaks, her dreams of a fashion line growing clearer with each passing day. The raise had eased some of the financial strain, and her mother's new treatment was showing promise. Malik had just received his first college acceptance letter, and Jada had framed it on their living room wall. The ripple effect of that day lingered. Customers treated her with a new respect, and the staff looked to her as a leader. Even Linda, once hesitant to rock the boat, had started enforcing stricter policies against customer misconduct. Greenleaf Market wasn't perfect, but it was changing, one small victory at a time. As Jada rang up a customer's groceries one evening, a young girl in the line watched her closely. The girl, no older than 10, had skin like Jada's and eyes full of curiosity. "You're really good at this," the girl said shyly. Jada smiled, handing the girl's mother the receipt. "Thank you, sweetheart. You know, it's not just about being good at your job. It's about being good to yourself, too." The girl nodded, her face lighting up. And in that moment, Jada knew her words, her stand, had done more than silence a bully or earn a promotion. They'd planted a seed, one that might grow in someone else's heart, just as it had in hers. Keep going. Keep shining.